Hello, I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. This series of podcasts is aimed at financial planning professionals and also those who are looking to enter the financial planning profession. We will be talking during the podcast about all things Certified Financial Planner certification related, talking to other CFPs around the world, and also we will be dropping in on some new entrants who've just entered the financial planning profession, and we'll be checking up along the way on a regular basis with them to see how they're getting on. I hope you enjoy today's podcast. I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. And today we are talking about a very special and very interesting subject with my very special guest, Charlotte Phillips-Lynn from Seccl. Hello, Charlotte.
Hello, you okay?
I am, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
So we are going to dive straight in, and I've got lots and lots of questions to ask you. And we are talking about how to help financial planners and paraplanners and small financial planning firms understand and appreciate the things that they might say, the questions they might ask their clients who perhaps identify as non-binary or part of the LGBT community.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start right at the very beginning and ask you about your personal journey. Yeah. And as we go along, for our listeners' benefit, I just want everybody to know that Charlotte is going to correct my language, aren't you, along the way, if I say anything that is a bit odd, or hopefully I won't say anything offensive, Charlotte, but feel free to correct me as we go.
Yeah.
So let's start at the very beginning and tell me a little bit about yourself and about how you got into financial services.
Yeah, so it was my first job, really. So I left home when I was 19, and it wasn't very easy to get a job back then. And I always said that I didn't want a job where I was on the phone or in an office. And then, funnily enough, I ended up getting a job where I was on the phone and in an office every day. So, but aside that was initially with a financial services firm who offered critical illness cover, income protection, but it also offered the products of pensions and even back down to endowments, which are long gone really these days. So, so it actually just gave me a love of financial services and wanting to know more, and that it, a lot of it changes, and there's so many different dynamics to it that actually I just found that so interesting. And that's kind of got me to where I am today.
So, yes, I remember the old endowments. It was a long time ago. I used to work at AXA, or Equity and Law as it was in those days.
Yeah.
And we used to deal with a lot of those kind of savings policies as well. And like you say, very much long gone now.
Yeah.
Okay, so when in your life's journey so far did you begin to identify as non-binary?
So it's kind of, now I look back on it, because hindsight is one of those wonderful things, that actually I've probably always been this way, and I think lockdown really for me, it gave me so much time and headspace to think about myself and what makes me happy and who I am. So I only came out as non-binary this year. Initially to family and close friends, and then on International Non-Binary People's Day I did a post on LinkedIn, Instagram, all that kind of stuff, and I also spoke on a panel with fellow non-binary people. So it's only been quite a recent thing for me to come out as non-binary, but like I said, I would say that I've probably always been this way. But when you're younger, or when I was younger, there wasn't necessarily the resources available to me to kind of work that out myself, and I just thought that I was wrong, I guess, and being more feminine, I wasn't like that, and I guess there's a lot of comparison when you're growing up and when you're younger and trying to find out where you fit, really. So it's been a journey. It's been definitely found out a lot about myself and other people around me and who I want in my life and that kind of stuff, really. So it's been quite interesting, but I'd say it's been quite a welcoming journey.
Yeah. And you spoke at the Next Gen conference as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. So that was amazing, to be honest. To be able to do that, and weirdly enough, to say I was non-binary to people who didn't know me was a lot easier to say it to people who that know me. Wait, does that make sense? Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about when you decided to, publicly come out as non-binary and explain to family and friends. You just mentioned it. You found it more difficult.
Yeah.
What was that? What was the process that you went through? For other people listening who might have clients who identify as non-binary and who perhaps haven't said anything to their parents or friends, or perhaps there might be children who are identifying in that way as well. What were the conversations that you had? Because I can imagine it must have been extremely difficult for you.
Yeah, it took a long time. I think when I originally came out as being gay, I was 16 or 17, and that's quite a few years ago now. But my experience of that wasn't the worst experience, but it also wasn't the best experience. And therefore, I think that kind of put a shadow over coming out as non-binary, because it just kind of brought back all those conversations that I'd had when I came out the first time. And I think just on that actually, if you do identify as part of the LGBTQ community, or you express your gender differently than outside the binary, and I think that that coming out, it happens every day, and sometimes multiple times a day. It doesn't just happen once. Yes. And I think that's kind of a misconception of people, that actually you have to make a decision in that moment of if you're going to come out as gay or non-binary like myself in that conversation. Yes. I know that can be quite difficult.
So it kind of feels like you're coming out, repeatedly over your life, trying to explain to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Gosh, that must be exhausting to do that all the time, Charlotte.
Yeah, I think it can be. I think stereotypically, I fit into some boxes, and therefore, sometimes not many people ask me if I have a husband, for example. Whereas it's different. It's a different question to my wife. So it can be exhausting. I think now more people are more accepting of it than when I was younger and coming out initially that first time. But it's usually the reaction you get from people that you watch. So some people in my experience have sort of taken a step back or made a derogatory comment. But I think now it is getting a lot better. Yes. Yeah, it's kind of in that moment of panic, I would call it, you have to decide whether you're going to come out to that person or just live or say something different and say, you do have a husband, or, whatever, just to kind of get off the subject of it. I know people who've done that in the past as well.
Yeah. And, that's not, I think one of the things for me that the pandemic has brought to the fore is about more of us living an authentic life.
Yeah.
And that really, those kind of conversations where you decide to change what is your authentic self, to change your story, it kind of goes against the grain of everything that we've kind of gone through over the last few years, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I think it's so true to live your authentic self, and for a while I wasn't doing that, and I was kind of saying to people, you've got to be happy and put yourself first, and I wasn't doing that because I was under this shadow of I guess not shame, but maybe a little bit of wanting to change who I was, and would other people be accepting. And I was kind of like, I shouldn't really care what other people think in the nicest way.
Yes.
I should just make myself happy and make sure I'm happy and make sure I'm living my authentic self. And I think, like I said before, like lockdown really did that for me. And I think, life's too short, and I'm someone who suffers with anxiety a lot. So I kind of sit in that, life's too short, but I'll worry about every little thing along the way kind of thing.
But you and me both.
I think you've just got to be happy, do what makes you happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so can we just talk about the LGBTQ community? Because I don't understand. Can you just run through what all of it what each of the letters stands for?
Yeah, so there's quite a few abbreviations of it. So there's LGBT, and that's it. And then there's LGBT plus, and then there's LGBTQ plus, and then there's LGBTQA plus, and each section has a different meaning. So, for example, the L stands for lesbian, G stands for gay, B stands for bisexual, T stands for trans, and then so that's kind of that LGBT bulk, and then the plus is kind of incorporating everyone else. So I know that a lot of the main ones that get used now is LGBTQA plus. So Q is for queer people or people who are questioning their identity or sexuality. I is for intersex people. And A is for asexual people, and then the plus, it kind of just incorporates the whole community there. Otherwise, you would kind of have like, some people refer to that community as the alphabet mafia, because it seems as though there's been a new letter added on all the time, which is kind of where that plus element comes in, because that just incorporates everyone within the community.
And I think that's a really good idea, actually, to put the plus on the end. But one of the terms you mentioned there, which was queer, was something that, certainly being a person of a certain age, when I was younger, I was forbidden to talk about that, to say that word. And so I think maybe for financial planners who are my kind of age, late 40s, early 50s onwards, that some of these terms that are now widely used have been ingrained over the years, that you shouldn't say things like that because you would offend somebody.
Yeah, I mean, so to be honest, for my identity, I identify as queer, and I think that encompasses my sexuality as well as my gender identity as well. And I would say, it's kind of coming back into fashion, if you want to call it that. And I know that some countries in the world refer to the LGBTQ community just as the queer community. And I think you're right. There's definitely been times where that word has been seen as derogatory, and a lot of people don't like it, and some people still don't like it, but some people have adopted using it again. So I think there's no harm in what I would say is the education piece of looking at what terms people use now, and even asking people or their colleagues or anything like that, because someone might know someone from the community and know how they want to be referred to. It's not speaking for everyone, but just that education piece there. And I think as well, in addition to that there's no harm in trying, and I would say that I think if you don't try and you don't educate, then that's where you're going wrong. Whereas if you try and you get it wrong, you learn from it.
Yes. Yeah. And that leads me on nicely to talk about you when you went into the workplace, or back to the workplace after the pandemic. How did you ask your colleagues to treat you differently? I mean, is it again a kind of situation where you kind of had your team meeting and you would say something, or you would, tackle each person as you came across them in different situations?
I think so when I started work, I wasn't a very confident person, so I just kind of kept my head down and got on with life, and it was just kind of part of me. And I think there was a lot of LGBTQ plus people in the workplace, or where I worked for like my last previous job. So it kind of was, I just found my people, I guess, and it wasn't really talked about. There was a few people in my team that I would say, certain things to, or bring up issues or anything like that. But I think where I work now, we did a survey. So when I first started, I was kind of the only openly gay person there, by a survey, not necessarily that I was. And now we do have more LGBTQ people within our company. But I think in terms of with coming out as non-binary and doing that, halfway through the year, I updated my pronouns on Slack, and have them on my email signature, and I didn't really make a big thing of it. And then I just started to tell people bit by bit. I think a lot of people are accepting of it, and a lot of people, when they refer to me do try and use the correct pronouns, but at the same time, I'm still in that weird place of I feel a bit scared, I guess, to challenge people when they're wrong, because I don't like doing that from that just being my personality. So that's kind of a new kind of thing that I'm trying to do at the moment. But I guess it's just one of those things I need to work on for myself. But yeah, I think I don't think I get treated any differently in the workplace, which is a good thing.
Oh, that's a great thing. And
Yeah.
you talked there about challenging people. And I guess, again, is that in the individual situations? I guess just like we were talking about, isn't it? If somebody said something, then you make that decision, but you've got to try and make a more conscious decision to speak up rather than just letting these comments go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'm kind of the person, I'm really easygoing, and, it takes a lot for someone to offend me or do anything like that. So I do let those things slide. But at the same time, then, it kind of gives me the ick that someone might refer to me in that way. So it's, I guess it's like baby steps for me at the moment to correct people. And I much prefer doing it after the situation has happened rather than stopping them midway through, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But yes, it's difficult sometimes.
Yeah, and I guess some people are aware and, like you say, are trying to get the right pronoun, and other people don't have a Scooby, to be honest. And and if you stop people like that kind of mid-flow or mid-heated discussion, then it could go anywhere, couldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think I haven't been in a situation where it's kind of been compromising as of yet, but I think there's definitely been the main kind of challenges that have happened is more within family, and it's more been like my wife or my sister-in-law doing it than myself. So I know that I need to be better at that, but it's just I guess it's just hard to pick my time in or when's the best time to do it. But at the end of the day, it's kind of I'm being referred to as I don't want to be. So it's definitely a next step on the non-binary life that I'm living at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess it's a similar sort of thing for for me. If somebody said him instead of her or something like that, then I would be offended. So I guess you've got to think of it in those situations and just keep trying, I guess, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I think there's definitely been, if stuff gets written about me, it's there's definitely that conscious effort there, I think. And I think we're so used to using default language of she and he that actually it's so you do have to think about it. And one day it becomes second nature. But even for me, and I've misgendered people before and felt awful for doing it, that actually it is that default language that we're quite hung up by.
Yes, yeah. And let's talk for a minute about other youngsters who might be at school or starting, as we were just discussing off air, weren't we, starting to go through puberty, perhaps becoming more aware and not identifying necessarily as male or female. And what would you say to them if they they're struggling, or they're there's support out there for them, isn't there? But there's plenty of resources, available to them. What would you say to people, perhaps listeners who have children or friends who are, starting to struggle?
I think, I think, looking back at my own growing up, there's definitely, you question yourself a lot. You get pressured into doing GCSEs and you have to decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life, and that kind of stuff. That actually finding yourself is also part of that journey. And I think so. As part of the mentoring that I do, I've spoken to a couple of young people who don't identify as male or female, and they're not sure if they're non-binary or any of the other options that there are, and what they feel most comfortable with, and if they want to put themselves in a box. And I think it's just having that acceptance, and that it might change over time, and it's not kind of a just make your mind up kind of situation. It's all part of a learning. I think what I would say to maybe parents or friends or anything like that is that just be supportive of them, and ask questions of how they want to be referred to and things like that, because I think growing up and having that support network is the biggest thing for kids. I know that it's just so important, and I think whether that gets taught in schools or not, I don't know, but I'd like to hope that somewhere out there schools are definitely bringing that to the forefront of their education.
Yes, yeah, it definitely needs to be if it hasn't started already.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think they're great messages. And also on this podcast, I'm going to snuffle some links of help support groups and charities as well from you, Charlotte, at the end of this, if I may. So we'll pop those on the links to the podcast as well for anybody who might find those of benefit. That'd be fantastic. So let's go back to the workplace now. So you're in the workplace. Now, I've been doing a bit of research, as you do, and I've been doing a bit of research about toilets.
Yeah.
And about tell me why unisex toilets are important.
So, interestingly, in our workplace, and by that I mean, we share a building with lots of other companies. So our toilets were unisex. And then there'd been a change over the last few months to change them to gender toilets. And I was quite disheartened by that because it's such a massive backstep. And funnily enough, I haven't really been into the office since that happened. But it looks as though they are changing them back to unisex toilets again. So I can kind of see toilets from both perspectives of having. So for me, I much prefer a unisex toilet because they're usually single blocks anyway. It's not as if you're sharing a toilet like they did in the olden days, sat next to each other. So I think for me, I feel like it's a much more comfortable place for me to use the toilet. And I think I have such a phobia of public toilets because in the past I've been dragged out of them, or there's been people say certain things or get security guards because they think I'm in the wrong toilet. And I think that just gives me so much anxiety, that actually having a unisex toilet just has that relief. And I think if they're single cubicle ones anyway, they're not separated by gender, then it doesn't really matter who uses a toilet. And I think there's a lot of backlash of both sides. And I think it's quite interesting. There's definitely been comments made of, if you don't like a unisex toilet, you literally use one at home or on an aeroplane or, anything in that kind of scenario. So I think for me, unisex toilets are really important to people like myself because it just gives you that safe space. But I can kind of understand the argument for, I read a document that the government put out about how women feel uncomfortable if they were using the same toilets as men because of their own safety and things like that. And I kind of get that perspective, but, in that sense, just make them all, unisex, or have a couple that are gendered and the rest unisex or something like that.
And actually, most of the time we spend most of our lives at work, don't we? So either working from home or in the office. So, as a first step, unisex toilets in all offices would be a huge step forward, wouldn't it?
Yeah, massively. Yeah.
I can't believe that you've been thrown out of a toilet.
Yeah, I wrote a post about it not too long ago. It was at a rugby game, and I was just standing in the queue waiting to go into, at that point, the ladies' toilet. And I was all wrapped up because it was a cold winter's day, and literally this woman just pulled me out of the queue and just started shouting at me and saying, "You're in the wrong toilet. I'm not using the toilet if you're in there," all that kind of stuff. And it's just a horrible experience because at the end of the day, like, in the nicest way, we all go to the toilet the same way. So it's kind of it's just kind of a stupid, comment. And it's just, I've had it a few times, and it just, I try then to just avoid public toilets when I'm out and about, unless I can't. But it's just, just unnecessary stress, I guess. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's thinking this. So, I think there just needs to be a change overall. But at the workplace, I think it's really important to show that you are, an inclusive business by having, even if you do have, 2 female toilets, 2 male toilets, and 2 unisex toilets, that actually, anyone can use them.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I just can't get over that. That's I just can't imagine being thrown out of a toilet or out of a line like that, Charlotte. I'm so sorry that you experienced that, but I think it's really brave of you to talk about it openly so that, the awareness of people increases so that they wouldn't behave like that in other circumstances. And, even if people wanted to challenge you in the queue, certainly if I was in the wrong queue, I was quite happy to be challenged once I went in the gents' toilets. I'm happy to be challenged. I'm sure you're happy to be challenged, but I don't think there's any need for anybody to be pulled out of a queue and treated the way that you were. I think that's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess some of the advantages of being non-binary and not identifying as either male or female is actually, the male toilet's always got a shorter queue.
True.
So it's kind of there's pros and cons.
Just dive in that one anyway.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so let's move on to another thing that you just mentioned briefly, and that is use of pronouns.
Yeah.
And I know other financial planners who have said to me, look, I can't, what's all the fuss about pronouns? Why are they so important?
Yeah.
So just give us a quick rundown about, first of all, why it's important for everybody to put pronouns on platforms like LinkedIn. Not only, I think, obviously to help them, but also to help, part of the LGBT community as well.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a twofold thing. So I think it's really important to display them because ultimately that's how you want to be referred. And a lot of people don't think they're important, but they are for people who don't necessarily use the pronouns sort of like she and he. And I think being important to show them is also then really important that you then use them. They're there to be used. So I think with my own personal pronoun journey, I used she, her, and then I went to she, they, and now now my pronouns are they, them. And I think it just goes back to being important that you use them. And I think it's important if you do display them that you are, if I was looking at someone and they displayed their pronouns, I would, imagine that they were a pretty open-minded and inclusive person. So I think that's kind of how important it is, because if I went to an employer that didn't display any of them versus someone who did display them, I think that would make me more comfortable in that situation.
Yeah. And I guess it shows to you that they've got some respect, they've done their homework, they understand what it means to put those pronouns on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, just kind of along the pronoun route, but a little bit different, is people's titles. So a lot of the options you get are Mrs., Mr. and Ms. And I think, sometimes the title isn't even needed. And I know that on a lot of forms that it does require one. But, I think maybe thinking out of the box of application forms and things like that for financial planners, just to kind of add in pronouns, what someone would want to be referred to as. And also, just thinking about that title, either leaving it open or, removing it completely. How often does someone need it, kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. And so if you were receiving a piece of post, how would you want it to be addressed? So without anything like Ms. or anything like that, or Mr. on the front, just C. Phillips-Lynn.
Yeah, I think so. I think I have updated a lot of my stuff now to show mix, so MX, which is kind of fallen out of that binary of Mr. and Mrs. And a lot of my posts still have Mrs. on it, just because there's not necessarily the option there to update it, but you do still have to put a title in there. And I think you should just give the option, like anything really. If you want to include your title, then feel free. But if not, that it's not kind of the end of the world.
Yes. And I think that's a really great tip actually for financial planners out there when they were obtaining this kind of client data to give those options to clients.
Yeah, because I think for me it just makes me feel uncomfortable if I have to choose one, rather than either leaving it blank or just settling for what I think I should put.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really important, isn't it? And what other things could I and other people who want to support the community, what could we do more of or less of to help?
There's quite. So I think pronouns and displaying those is really important, and I think reviewing your company policies. I think there's or certainly with some I've seen in the past, it's named as maternity or paternity leave rather than parental leave.
Yeah.
And I think it's just I say they're simple things, but to go over things like that with a fine tooth comb and see how you can change that and become a more inclusive organisation, and just have that education piece of understanding what it could be like for someone from the LGBTQ plus community, or asking questions or attending events where people speak about what it's like to be part of the community. And I think it's a never-ending list in a certain way, but I think those are kind of the main important things of being open and open-minded and inclusive, and kind of showing that you're inclusive, not just saying you're inclusive.
Yes, I think it's one thing saying it and another thing doing it, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it seems really simple. There are some really simple steps, like you said, changing paternity leave, maternity leave to parental leave.
Yeah.
There are lots of really simple things that employers can do right now that would take no expense if they wanted to be more inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I go back to that point of education and learning, and using the right terminology. And I think even if I think having no hesitation to give it a go, and if you get it wrong, you learn from it.
Yes.
I think you can always tell when someone's being purposely obnoxious versus when they're just asking you a question.
Yeah.
So I'd say just do some education. I think we're all really busy people, but having 10 minutes out to educate yourself in a whole day isn't big in the grand scheme of things.
No, absolutely. And that leads me nicely on to talk to you about this Next Gen conference, because that's really where we met, wasn't it, on this Speaker and Influencer program?
Yeah.
Tell me about why you decided to sign up for the Speaker Influencer program.
So I haven't really done any public speaking. The stuff that I had done, I used to get so nervous about it and choke up, and then I couldn't speak anymore. So when this opportunity came about, we kind of had to put a submission together on why we wanted it and what we were planning on talking about to various members of our company. So I was split in my decision of speaking about what I spoke about LGBTQ people in the workplace and inclusivity and things like that, and what I did as my day-to-day job. And I could talk about my day-to-day job for the 10 minutes, but actually my passion lies within speaking about the LGBTQ community and sharing awareness and things like that. And so I think the courses, like the training that we had, has benefited me so much in terms of learning to speak and how to do, the emotional storytelling side of things, and just being able to kind of settle those nerves. And I think, to be honest, when I did the virtual one, I think I was more nervous doing that one than I was the in-person one.
Really? Why was that? Because I guess you didn't have anybody around you, or why were you nervous doing the virtual one?
I mean, I was in the meeting room in the office. I had to, because I was the last person to speak that day, so I had to wait all day for it to come around. And it was kind of the first time that I delivered this message, so I was worried about what people were going to say afterwards. And I was just really nervous about it. I guess because I couldn't get that reaction from people, because all you can see is your own face, and I needed to cover that up. So and I think beforehand, I'm going to ask the Next Gen planners actually whether they have like a, because we were in that kind of like green room style situation, and I remember throwing this stress ball around the room and it hit me in the face and then swearing, and I was like, I hope somewhere there's like a gag reel, because that would definitely be in it. But I think it was just really important to me because it's kind of just found my love of public speaking and being a bit more open and mainly sharing my experience to help someone else. And if I help one person, then to me, that's kind of, I see that as an achievement.
Yeah, well, I think you have helped more than one person for certain, Charlotte, because you have helped me, and I'm sure you've helped more than one person, more than just little old me. So I think you are an amazing person, and have so much more confidence. I've seen you as the weeks have gone on. We've done our chats, haven't we? And we've done our little dry runs and things like that, as we did on the programme. And you have grown in stature and in confidence as the weeks have gone by, and got a standing ovation at the Next Gen conference, if memory serves me correctly.
I was quite emotional afterwards. I was on such a high because I'd done it, and I was so pleased to have done it and got the reception that I did. So I was really happy, and thank you for your kind comments.
No, it's my pleasure. I knew the truth. And so tell me about what is next for you, Charlotte.
So I'm kind of at a crossroads in a way, in terms of my career. So I've had options to go down more of the D&I route, in that kind of world, but I think I love finance too much to give that up at the moment. So I think for me, it's doing my day-to-day job, and also, there's a couple of events that I would like to speak at and attend, and being on podcasts like this one here has been really exciting as well, to share my journey and my thoughts, and for it to be welcomed and help people. And I think that's kind of the balance that I've got at the moment of doing, my day-to-day, which I really enjoy doing, and the company I work for. And then, also spreading awareness on LinkedIn or Instagram or any of those kind of things, and hopefully attending some events to speak at in the future. I think that's kind of where I'm at the moment, because I enjoy doing both. And I think the financial world needs a voice to speak up and challenge it, because I think it's, like all things, each industry has its flaws and stuff like that, but I think the financial world could be more inclusive, and I think ultimately that would then better everyone, in terms of company results and people who are receiving financial advice, and the list goes on, really.
And what strikes me is that so many of these steps to become more inclusive are so easy to achieve. It's not a case of, having to do lots of research, or, it's a little bit of time to do a bit of research. It's not a case of spending tens of thousands of pounds or hundreds of thousands of pounds of companies' money, is it?
No, exactly. And I think, I've kind of been asked about doing consultancy for a couple of firms to check their policies and stuff like that. And I think even something like that, to be able to just change a few things, like you say, it's not a massive amount of money or really a massive amount of time when you look at it, that actually, those small things make such a big difference to someone like me.
Yeah, absolutely. And things that, so many people have taken for granted, or fought for rights in the past, the suffragettes, and it's another area that everybody is entitled to be treated equally, and so we should just get on and do it, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. As easy as that.
And make it sound so simple. If I need to get my magic wand out, I'm sure it's in the drawer down here somewhere. But I'll let you know if I find it. So just to wrap up now, because we are nearly out of time, I just wanted to ask, is there anything else that perhaps I haven't covered in my waffling around asking you all these questions so far today, that you just think that we should discuss, or that you want to mention?
I think the only thing for me, I know that a lot of people find it hard to ask for help, me being one of those, that actually, there's people like me out in the world to ask a question, to make your workplace more inclusive. And if that's what you want to do, like the few things I mentioned of changing policies or pronouns, or, having awareness days, I think, there's, I know that in companies I've been in, we've had like religious awareness days, or celebrated things like Chinese New Year or Ramadan or anything like that. And our company holds a Pride event every year, which is a really good thing, as well as all the other things I mentioned above there. And I think just if you are wanting help, then ask for it. There's definitely people there to be able to help you. So I would just probably say that.
Definitely. Very good advice. Charlotte, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. It's really interesting, isn't it, to listen to other people's points of view about different things, all relating to our wonderful financial planning profession. If you know anyone who might be interested in listening to any of these podcasts, please pass on our details to them. So that's it from me. Join me again next time when we'll be talking all things certified financial planner related, and also dropping in on our new entrants to the financial planning profession. Bye for now.